Picture this. It's early afternoon, and you're lying in the shade, with nothing to do, no notifications, no deadlines, no guilt about wasted time. For roughly 95% of human history, that was just an ordinary Tuesday. Across a 45-year career, the average person today spends close to 80,000 hours at work. That's more than 9 years of your life, awake, on the clock. But for almost all of the 300,000 years our species has existed, none of that existed. No jobs, no wages, no Monday morning. So what filled those days? In 1966, anthropologist Marshall Sahlins looked at the data coming in from hunter-gatherer societies and made a claim that stunned other researchers. He called them the original affluent society. They had more free time than almost anyone reading this right now. Decades later, anthropologist Frank Marlowe spent years living among the Hadza in northern Tanzania, one of the last groups on Earth who still hunt and gather most of their food. He tracked their days, hour by hour. Men spent about 6 hours hunting or searching for honey. Women spent 3 to 5 hours gathering tubers, berries, and baobab fruit. Everyone else, children, elders, people resting between trips, did whatever they wanted. Now you might think, sure, but that's one group in one place with plenty of food. Fair point. So let's look somewhere harder. The Agta people live deep in the rainforests of the Philippines. A 2016 study by anthropologist Abigail Page found something striking. Agta groups living far from towns worked about as little as the Hadza. Agta groups trading labor for rice near markets worked nearly twice as many hours. The closer people got to something resembling a job, the faster their free time disappeared. There's another reason these groups stayed so equal. In 1969, anthropologist Richard Lee described a custom among the Juhowansi of the Kalahari. When a hunter returned with a large kill, the rest of the group immediately mocked it, calling the meat thin or worthless, even when it clearly wasn't. Lee later explained that the insults kept a skilled hunter from turning his skill into authority over everyone else. Anthropologist Christopher Boehm gave this pattern a name: reverse dominance, a system where the group actively punishes anyone who tries to rise above the rest. No permanent chiefs. No one allowed to hoard status the way a modern boss does. So when did this shift really take hold? Around 10,000 years ago, in the Fertile Crescent, people started planting wheat and barley instead of gathering it. At a site called Abu Huraira in modern Syria, archaeologists examined skeletons of early farmers. Their toe bones showed severe arthritis, a pattern caused by kneeling for hours, grinding grain with stone tools. Their spines curved forward. Their teeth were worn down to nubs from grit baked into bread. Hunter-gatherer skeletons from the same region show none of this. But farming couldn't erase the urge to make things that had nothing to do with survival. At a site called Sungir in Russia, archaeologists uncovered a 30,000-year-old burial. The bodies were covered in thousands of ivory beads, each one shaped and drilled by hand. Researcher Randall White estimated that producing all those beads took roughly 7,500 hours of work. That's nearly a full year of 40-hour weeks spent on something purely decorative. In Denisova Cave in Siberia, archaeologists found a bracelet carved from polished chlorite dated to around 40,000 years ago. Its drilled hole was so precise that some researchers believe it required a tool spinning at high speed, technology nobody expected to exist for tens of thousands more years. In the Lascaux caves of southwestern France, painters around 17,000 years ago covered the walls with bulls, horses, and deer. Some stretched across 5 meters of rock, painted by the light of animal fat lamps. None of it fed anyone. None of it kept anyone warm. People did it because they had the hours to spare. And because making beautiful, useless things is something humans have always done the moment survival stopped eating every hour of the day. So picture an actual day. You wake to light and noise, birds, voices, someone rebuilding the fire. Breakfast is whatever's left from yesterday. Dried meat or fruit. There's no rush. If food is stored, today might involve no hunting at all. Instead, someone repairs a net. Someone else straightens arrow shafts over a small flame. A few people walk out to check a beehive they've been watching for weeks. Children spend that morning the same way, surrounded by people, never alone for long. Anthropologist Gilda Morelli studied the Fa people of the Congo rainforest and found that in the first few months of life, a single infant is held by more than a dozen different caregivers, passed from mother to grandmother to aunt to a neighbor walking past. No one parent carries the full weight of keeping a child alive. The group does. Here's something most people overlook. Cooking changes everything. Anthropologist Richard Wrangham points out that chimpanzees, who eat mostly raw food, spend up to 6 hours a day just chewing. Cooked food is soft and digests fast, and that frees up hours every single day. Those hours didn't vanish. They turned into conversation, rest, and play. Sleep looked different, too. A popular idea claims pre-industrial humans slept in 2 separate blocks, with a waking period in the middle of the night. But a 2015 study led by sleep researcher Jerome Siegel, monitoring the Hadza, the San in Namibia, and the Tisame in Bolivia, found something else. These groups mostly slept in one block, around 6.5 to 8.5 hours, going to bed a few hours after dark and waking before sunrise. Almost none of them reported insomnia, a condition extremely common in places lit by electricity around the clock. Then, slowly, agriculture changed the math. More food meant more people. More people meant more mouths, which meant more farming. Populations grew around places like Catalhoyuk in modern Turkey, a settlement of up to 8,000 people by around 7,000 BCE. Houses were packed wall to wall, with no streets, entered through holes in the roof. Density brought disease, hierarchy, and specialists: potters, builders, soldiers, rulers, people whose hours now belonged, in part, to someone else. A few thousand years later, in what's now Bulgaria, archaeologists excavating a site called Varna found a burial dripping in gold. The man inside wore a gold-plated scepter and was buried with more than 3 kilograms of gold ornaments, while skeletons just meters away held nothing at all. Researchers consider it the earliest clear evidence of wealth inequality in the archaeological record. Property had arrived, and so had the gap between people who had it and people who didn't. None of this means prehistoric life was easy. Infant mortality was brutal, injuries went untreated, and a bad season could mean real hunger. But the hours that weren't spent surviving belonged to the people living them, not handed back by an employer, not scheduled around someone else's calendar. Today, you measure your worth in hours logged and deadlines met. 10,000 years ago, your ancestors judged a day by whether the fire stayed lit and the stories landed. They weren't waiting for retirement to start living. They were already living every single day with nothing to prove and nowhere they had to be.